The gunshot echoed across the dusty main street of Chisholm Ranch, New Mexico, and Bethany Morrison knew her father had just killed another man's dream of courting her. She stood at the window of her family's sprawling ranch house, watching the young ranch hand scramble onto his horse and ride away as fast as the animal could carry him. Her father, William Morrison, the wealthiest cattle baron in Lincoln County, holstered his pistol with the casual indifference of a man who had fired warning shots at 5 suitors in the past 3 months alone. It was July of 1878, and Bethany had turned 21 just 2 weeks prior. Yet her father treated her like property to be guarded rather than a woman with her own mind and heart. "That is the last one you will scare away," Bethany said, her voice trembling with barely contained fury as she turned from the window. Her mother, Catherine Morrison, sat in the parlor with her needlework, pretending she had not heard the gunshot, pretending this was all perfectly normal. "Bethany, your father knows what is best," her mother said without looking up from her embroidery. "Those men are only after our money and our land, every single one of them." "You do not know that," Bethany protested, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You have not given any of them a chance to prove otherwise." Her father strode through the front door, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. He was a tall man with gray streaking through his dark hair, his face weathered by years under the New Mexico sun. "That boy did not even own his own horse. He was riding one of mine. Did you think I would let you throw your life away on a ranch hand with nothing to his name?" "He was kind," Bethany said. "He spoke to me like I was a person, not a prize." "Kind does not put food on the table or build an empire," her father said, his voice final. "You will marry someone worthy of this family, or you will not marry at all. Those are your choices, daughter." Bethany felt tears of frustration burn behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had been raised to be strong, to be dignified, to represent the Morrison name with grace. But she had also been raised to be obedient, and that particular lesson had never quite taken root in her heart. "I am going to town," she announced, reaching for her riding hat. "Take your brother with you," her father commanded. "Thomas is out with the cattle drive. I will take Maria." Maria was their housekeeper's daughter, a girl close to Bethany's age who had become something like a friend over the years, though her father would never acknowledge such a relationship between employer and employee. Her father waved his hand dismissively, already moving toward his study. "Be back before dark." Bethany did not trust herself to respond. She collected Maria, and together they rode into Chisholm Ranch proper, the small collection of buildings that served as the town center for the sprawling ranching community. The general store, the saloon, the church, the blacksmith, and a handful of other establishments lined the dusty main street. It was not much, but it was better than staying in that house with her parents and their suffocating expectations. The general store was cool and dim after the bright afternoon sun. Bethany purchased ribbon she did not need and soap her mother had not asked for, just to have an excuse to be away from home a little longer. Maria selected thread for her mother, and they were about to leave when Bethany heard a voice that made her stop in her tracks. "Madam, I believe you dropped this." She turned to find a man holding out a lace handkerchief. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of good whiskey. His dark hair was slightly too long, curling at the nape of his neck beneath his worn cowboy hat. His clothes were clean but clearly well used, the kind of practical wear that marked a working man rather than a wealthy one. But it was his face that caught her attention, the genuine kindness in his expression, the respectful distance he maintained even as he offered her the handkerchief. "That is not mine," Bethany said, though she found herself wishing it were, just to have an excuse to speak with him longer. He glanced down at the delicate lace, then back up at her, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Well, now I feel like a fool. I saw it on the floor near where you were standing and assumed it was yours." He had a slight drawl to his words, not the harsh bark of her father's voice, but something softer, more musical. "An honest mistake," Bethany said, and found herself smiling back. "I appreciate your courtesy regardless." "Russell Lewis," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "I am new to the area, just hired on with the Patterson spread east of here." "Bethany Morrison," she replied, and watched his expression shift almost imperceptibly. Everyone in Lincoln County knew the Morrison name. Her father owned more land than any other rancher for miles, ran more cattle, employed more men. The Morrison name meant wealth and power, and it usually meant that men like Russell Lewis kept their distance. But Russell did not step back. If anything, he seemed to stand a little straighter. "Well, Miss Morrison, it is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day." He tipped his hat again and turned to leave, and Bethany felt a strange sense of loss as she watched him go. "He is handsome," Maria whispered beside her. "And he did not look afraid when you said your name." "He will be once he hears about my father," Bethany said quietly. But something in her chest had sparked to life, a flutter of hope that she had thought her father had successfully stamped out. Over the following weeks, Bethany found excuses to go into town more frequently. She volunteered to pick up supplies, to deliver messages, to attend church services she had previously found tedious. And more often than not, she would catch sight of Russell Lewis. He seemed to be in town with similar frequency, though his reasons appeared more legitimate. He would be picking up feed or having a horse shod or purchasing supplies for the Patterson ranch. Their conversation started small, a greeting in passing, a comment about the weather. But gradually, they grew longer, more substantial. Russell would ask her opinion on things, actually listen when she spoke, treat her insights with respect rather than condescension. He told her about growing up in Texas, about losing his parents to illness when he was 17, about working his way across the territories learning the cattle trade. He was 25 now, he said, and hoping to save enough to buy his own small spread someday. "It does not have to be much," he said one afternoon when they found themselves both sheltering from a sudden rainstorm under the overhang of the general store. Maria stood a discreet distance away, pretending not to listen. "Just enough land for a modest herd, a good house, maybe some horses. A place to build something real, you know. Something that is mine, that I earned with my own hands." "That sounds wonderful," Bethany said, and meant it. She had grown up with wealth and land, but none of it felt like hers. It was all her father's, all tied up in his ambitions and his plans. The idea of building something from nothing, of creating a life based on hard work and determination rather than inheritance, struck her as impossibly romantic. "What about you?" Russell asked. "What do you want from life?" No one had ever asked her that before. Her parents had told her what she would want, what she should want, what was appropriate for a woman of her station to want, but no one had ever actually asked her. "I want to make my own choices," she said finally. "I want to wake up in the morning and know that my life is mine, not something handed to me or dictated by someone else. I want to matter, not just as a name or a fortune, but as a person." Russell looked at her for a long moment, rain drumming on the roof above them. "I think you already matter, Miss Morrison, and I think anyone who cannot see that is a fool." Bethany felt her breath catch in her throat. "You should call me Bethany. Only if you call me Russell." "All right, Russell." The way he smiled at her, then made her feel like the sun had come out despite the rain still falling around them. She knew in that moment that she was in danger of losing her heart to this man, this cowboy with nothing but dreams and determination. And she knew with equal certainty that her father would never approve. Their encounters became more intentional after that. Russell would arrange to be in town when he knew she might visit. Bethany would linger near the places she had seen him before. They stole conversations in the margins of their lives, always with Maria as a chaperone, always careful to maintain propriety. But the connection between them grew stronger with each meeting, a thread pulling tighter and tighter until Bethany could hardly breathe when she was not near him. It was Maria who finally confronted her about it. "You are falling in love with him," she said one evening as they rode back to the Morrison ranch after another afternoon in town. "I know," Bethany said. "There was no point in denying it. What am I going to do, Maria?" "My father will never accept him. Russell has no money, no land, no family name. Everything my father would consider important Russell lacks. But he has a good heart," Maria said, "and he looks at you like you hung the moon and stars. That will not matter to my father. Maybe it should matter more to you what you want than what your father wants." Bethany knew Maria was right, but knowing it and acting on it were two different things. She had lived her entire life under her father's rule, shaped by his expectations. The thought of defying him was terrifying, not because she feared he would harm her, but because she feared losing the only family she had ever known. But then Russell kissed her, and everything changed. It happened on a warm evening in late August. Bethany had told her parents she was attending a church social, which was technically true, but she had also arranged to meet Russell afterward. They walked together along the creek that ran east of town, Maria trailing behind at a distance that gave them the illusion of privacy. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, and the cottonwood trees rustled in the evening breeze. "I need to tell you something," Russell said, stopping near a bend in the creek where the water ran shallow over smooth stones. "And I need you to hear me out before you respond." Bethany's heart began to race. "All right." He took off his hat, turning it in his hands, a nervous gesture she had never seen from him before. "I know I am not what your family would want for you. I know I do not have wealth or land or any of the things that men like your father value. But Bethany, I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. You are smart and kind and brave, and when I am with you, I feel like I am the best version of myself. I know it is probably foolish, and I know I have no right to ask, but I am falling in love with you. And I need to know if there is any chance you might feel the same way." Bethany felt tears spring to her eyes, but these were not tears of frustration or sadness. "Russell, I do feel the same way. I have been trying not to, trying to be practical and sensible, but I cannot help it. When I am with you, I feel free in a way I have never felt before. You see me, really see me, not just the Morrison name or the fortune or the expectations. You see me." "Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes," she whispered. He stepped closer, cupping her face gently in his calloused hands, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. It was nothing like the chaste pecks she had been given by the suitors her father had approved of before deciding they were not good enough. This was real and honest and filled with a longing that matched her own. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard, and Bethany knew there was no going back from this moment. "I want to court you properly," Russell said. "I want to ask your father for permission. I want to do this right." Bethany's happiness dimmed slightly. "Russell, you do not understand. My father will say no. He has scared off every other man who has shown interest in me, and they had far more to offer than you do." She said it bluntly because she needed him to understand the reality of the situation. "Then I will prove myself to him. I will work harder, save more money, show him I am worthy of you. It will not matter." My father has already decided what kind of man I should marry, and no amount of hard work will change his mind. She took Russell's hands in hers. I am telling you this now because I do not want you to be surprised when he refuses. I do not want you to think it is because you are not good enough, because you are. You are more than good enough, but my father will never see it that way. Russell's jaw tightened. So what do we do? Give up? Pretend we do not care about each other? No, Bethany said, and in that moment she made her choice. We court in secret for now and we make our plans. Because Russell, if you are serious about wanting to be with me, then I need you to understand something. It will mean defying my family. It will mean losing my inheritance, probably losing contact with my parents entirely. It will mean giving up everything I have known for a life that will be much harder, much less certain. Are you prepared for that? Are you? He countered. I think I am, she said. For the first time in my life, I think I am ready to choose what I want instead of what is expected of me. They began courting in secret after that. Russell would ride out to meet her at predetermined locations, always careful to avoid the parts of the Morrison ranch where her father's men worked. Sometimes they would meet at the creek, sometimes in a grove of trees halfway between the Morrison and Patterson properties, sometimes in town with the crowd as camouflage. Maria proved to be an invaluable ally, covering for Bethany when she slipped away, creating excuses and diversions. The more time Bethany spent with Russell, the more certain she became that this was right. He was everything she had not known she wanted. He made her laugh with his stories of cattle drives gone wrong and horses with stubborn streaks. He listened to her thoughts on books she had read, on the politics of the territory, on her dreams for the future. He taught her to identify animal tracks and to predict weather by the clouds. He valued her mind as much as her beauty, treated her as an equal partner in their conversations rather than a decoration to be admired. And when he kissed her, which he did with increasing frequency, she felt alive in a way she had never experienced before. There was a heat between them that both thrilled and terrified her, a desire that grew stronger each time they were together. Russell was always respectful, always stopping before things went too far, but Bethany could feel the restraint it required from him, could see the hunger in his eyes that matched her own. I want to marry you, he said one afternoon in late September as they lay side by side in the tall grass near the creek, staring up at the clouds. I know it is too soon. I know I should wait, but Bethany, I want to spend my life with you. I want to build that little ranch and make it a home with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want children with you if you want them. I want everything with you. Bethany rolled onto her side to face him, propping herself up on one elbow. I want that too, all of it. But Russell, we need to talk about the reality of our situation. If we get married, my father will disown me. He will do everything in his power to make our lives difficult. He has influence in this territory, and he is not above using it. I am not afraid of your father. Maybe you should be. He is a powerful man, Russell, and a vindictive one when he feels wronged. If he sees our marriage as a betrayal, which he will retaliate. Russell sat up, his expression serious. Then we need to be smart about this. We need to have a plan in place before we do anything. I have been saving money, but it is not nearly enough to buy land yet. The Pattersons have offered me a foreman position, which would mean better pay, but it would still take years to save enough for our own place. We could leave, Bethany said. The idea had been growing in her mind for weeks. We could go somewhere my father's influence does not reach. California, maybe, or north to Colorado. We could start fresh where no one knows the Morrison name. Is that what you want, to leave New Mexico entirely? Bethany thought about it carefully. I want to be with you. Everything else is negotiable. Russell reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "Let me talk to your father first. Let me at least try to do this the right way. If he says no, then we will make our plans to leave. But I need to be able to look back on this and know I did everything I could to honor your family, even if they do not honor us." "He will say no," Bethany warned again. "I know, but I need to try anyway." Russell came to the Morrison ranch on a Sunday afternoon in early October. Bethany watched from her bedroom window as he rode up the long drive to the main house, sitting tall in his saddle despite what must have been considerable nervousness. He had dressed in his best clothes, such as they were, and had clearly taken care with his appearance. Her heart ached with love for him and with dread for what was about to happen. Her father received Russell in his study. Bethany was not permitted to attend the meeting, but she stood in the hallway outside, listening through the door. Her mother had tried to pull her away, but Bethany had refused to move. "Mr. Morrison, I have come to ask for permission to court your daughter," Russell said, his voice clear and respectful. There was a long silence. Then her father laughed, a harsh sound without humor. You want to court Bethany?" "Yes, sir. I know I am not what you might have envisioned for her, but I care for your daughter deeply. I can provide for her, I have steady work, and I am saving toward buying my own land." "Steady work as a ranch hand," her father said dismissively. "Do you have any idea what my daughter is worth?" "The Morrison Ranch spans 50,000 acres. We run 15,000 head of cattle. I have business interests in 3 territories. And you think you can provide for her on a cowboy's wages? I think I can make her happy, sir, and I think that should count for something." "Happiness is a luxury for people who can afford it," her father said. "My daughter needs security, status, a man who can maintain the lifestyle she was born into. You cannot offer her any of that. With respect, sir, I think your daughter should have a say in what she needs." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Are you telling me how to handle my own daughter?" "I am suggesting that Bethany is a grown woman capable of making her own decisions. Bethany is my daughter, and she will do as I say. The answer is no, Mr. Lewis. You do not have permission to court her. You do not have permission to speak to her. If I see you anywhere near her again, I will make certain you cannot find work in this territory. Do I make myself clear?" "Perfectly clear, sir." Russell's voice was tight with controlled anger. "But I think you are making a mistake. Your daughter is an extraordinary woman, and she deserves to be treated as more than property to be managed. Get out of my house." Bethany heard Russell's footsteps approaching the door and quickly stepped back. He emerged looking furious and hurt, but when he saw her standing there, his expression softened. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I tried." "I know," she said. "Thank you for trying." "Bethany, get in here," her father bellowed from inside the study. She squeezed Russell's hand quickly, then stepped into the study, closing the door behind her. Her father stood behind his massive desk, his face red with anger. "Have you been seeing that man?" There was no point in lying. Her father would see through it immediately. "Yes." He slammed his hand down on the desk. "I raised you better than this. Sneaking around behind my back with a ranch hand who has nothing to offer you but a hard life and poverty." "He has more to offer me than any of the men you would approve of," Bethany said, lifting her chin. "He treats me with respect. He values my opinions. He makes me feel like a person rather than a possession. He wants your money. He wants me. There is a difference. You are forbidden from seeing him again. Do you understand me? Forbidden. I will have the ranch hands keep watch. If he comes near you, I will have him arrested for trespassing. You cannot control who I love. I can and I will. You are my daughter and you will obey me in this. I am 21 years old. I am not a child. Then stop acting like one." Her father's voice was cold now, calculated. If you defy me on this, Bethany, there will be consequences. I will cut you off entirely. No inheritance, no family, nothing. You will be choosing a life of hardship over everything I have built for you. Maybe I am willing to make that choice." For a moment, her father looked genuinely shocked. Then his expression hardened again. "You are confined to this house until further notice. You will not go into town. You will not go riding. You will stay here where I can keep an eye on you until you come to your senses. You are going to imprison me. I am going to protect you from your own foolishness." Bethany stared at her father, this man she had loved and feared and tried so hard to please her entire life. And she realized that nothing she ever did would be enough for him unless it aligned perfectly with his plans. She was not his daughter to him, not really. She was an asset, a piece of his empire to be deployed strategically. "You cannot keep me here forever," she said. "I can keep you here long enough for you to forget about that cowboy and move on with your life." But her father was wrong. The enforced isolation only strengthened Bethany's resolve. She spent her days planning, thinking through every detail of how she could escape and build a life with Russell. Maria smuggled letters between them, risking her own position to help Bethany communicate with the man she loved. Russell wrote to her about his plans, about how he was saving every penny, about how the Patterson foreman position had come through, and he was now making better money. He wrote about his love for her, about his determination that they would find a way to be together. And Bethany wrote back, pouring her heart onto paper, telling him about her own plans. She had jewelry her grandmother had left her, pieces that were legally hers and not part of her father's estate. She could sell them for enough money to get them started somewhere new. She had been researching, reading everything she could find about California and Colorado, about land prices and opportunities. She was ready to leave everything behind except for what she could carry in a saddlebag. The opportunity came in late October. Her father had to travel to Santa Fe for business, a trip that would take him away for nearly a week. Her mother would be in charge, but her mother was easier to manage, less watchful. Bethany told Maria her plan, and Maria agreed to help. On the third night after her father left, Bethany waited until the household was asleep. She dressed in her riding clothes, packed a bag with essentials and her grandmother's jewelry, and crept out of her room. Maria met her at the back door with food and a canteen of water. "Are you certain about this?" Maria whispered. "More certain than I have ever been about anything," Bethany replied. She hugged Maria tightly. "Thank you for everything. I will write to you when I can. Be safe. Be happy." Bethany slipped out into the night, moving quietly to the stables. She saddled her favorite horse, a sturdy mare named Daisy, and led her out away from the house before mounting. Then she rode hard toward the place where she had arranged to meet Russell, an abandoned line shack on the edge of the Morrison property. He was already there, waiting in the moonlight. When he saw her, his face broke into a wide smile. "You came. Did you doubt I would? Never." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her fiercely. "Are you ready for this? Once we leave, there is no going back." "I am ready. Where are we going?" "I thought Colorado." "I have a friend in Pueblo who says there is good land available, and it is far enough from here that your father's influence will not reach. We can get married there, start our life together. Then let us go." They rode through the night, pushing their horses hard to put as much distance as possible between themselves and Chisholm Ranch. Bethany felt a wild exhilaration mixed with fear. She had left behind everything she had ever known, defied the father who had controlled her entire life, chosen an uncertain future with a man she loved over the security of her family's wealth. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. They stopped at dawn to rest the horses and eat some of the food Maria had packed. Russell built a small fire and they sat close together, shoulders touching, watching the sun rise over the New Mexico landscape. "Do you regret it?" Russell asked quietly. "No," Bethany said without hesitation. "Do you?" "How could I regret being with you? You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Bethany Morrison." "Soon to be Bethany Lewis," she said, and felt a thrill at the thought. They continued north, traveling during the cooler parts of the day and resting during the worst heat. Russell was cautious, avoiding main roads and towns where someone might recognize Bethany and send word back to her father. They survived on game Russell hunted and supplies they carefully rationed. It was harder than anything Bethany had ever experienced, sleeping on the hard ground, washing in cold streams, constantly moving. But she found she did not mind. With Russell beside her, even the hardships felt like adventures. On the 5th day of their journey, they finally crossed into Colorado territory. Bethany felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. They were out of New Mexico, out of her father's immediate reach. They still had a long way to go to Pueblo, but at least they had made it this far. They found a small town called Trinidad nestled in the shadow of the mountains. It was a rough place, the kind of frontier town that attracted prospectors and cowboys and people running from something. Perfect for two people who needed to disappear for a while. They checked into the town's only hotel, a shabby establishment that had probably seen better days, and Russell paid for a room. "We should get married here," Russell said as they stood in the small room with its single bed and cracked mirror. "I do not want to wait any longer. I do not want there to be any question about our commitment to each other." "Neither do I," Bethany agreed. "But Russell, I need to tell you something first. I warned you that my family would never approve. I told you that choosing me meant choosing a hard life, at least at first. And now that we are here, now that we have actually done it, I need to know that you do not regret it. I need to know that you are choosing me, not just the idea of me." Russell took her hands in his expression serious. "Bethany, I heard everything you said about your family. I understood the consequences. And I am telling you right now, good thing I am only marrying you because you are all I want. Not your father's money, not the Morrison name, not any of that. Just you. Your strength, your intelligence, your courage. The way you laugh at my bad jokes and challenge my assumptions. The way you look at the world and see possibilities instead of limitations. That is what I am marrying. That is what I choose." Bethany felt tears slip down her cheeks. That is exactly what I needed to hear. They found the town's preacher, an elderly man with kind eyes who asked no questions about where they had come from or why they were in such a hurry to wed. He married them in the small church with the hotel owner's wife and the bartender from the saloon as witnesses. Bethany wore the same travel-stained riding clothes she had been wearing for days, and Russell was dusty and unshaven. But when he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger and promised to love her for the rest of his life, Bethany felt like the most fortunate woman in the world. That night in their hotel room, they consummated their marriage. Russell was gentle and patient, understanding that this was Bethany's first time. He took his time, making sure she was comfortable, that she wanted this as much as he did. And when they finally came together, Bethany understood what all the fuss was about. This was intimacy, true connection, two people choosing to be vulnerable with each other in the most profound way possible. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, and Bethany felt a peace she had never known before. "I love you, Mrs. Lewis," Russell murmured against her hair. "I love you too, Mr. Lewis." They stayed in Trinidad for 2 more days, resting and resupplying before continuing to Pueblo. The town was larger than Bethany had expected, a growing community at the confluence of the Arkansas River and Fountain Creek. Russell's friend, A man named Jack, who had worked with him on a cattle drive years before, welcomed them warmly and helped Russell find work at one of the local ranches. The first months of their marriage were difficult. They lived in a small cabin on the ranch where Russell worked, barely bigger than a single room. Money was tight, and Bethany had to learn to do things she had never done before, cooking and cleaning and managing a household without servants. She burned more meals than she successfully prepared at first, and her hands developed calluses from hauling water and scrubbing floors. But she learned, and gradually the work became easier. Russell worked long hours, often leaving before dawn and returning after dark. But he always greeted her with a kiss, always asked about her day, always made her feel valued and loved. On Sundays, their day off, they would explore the area around Pueblo, dreaming about where they might buy land when they had saved enough money. In early December, Bethany realized she had not had her monthly courses in nearly 2 months. At first, she thought it was the stress of their flight and the adjustment to their new life. But when another week passed and she began feeling queasy in the mornings, she knew. She was pregnant. She told Russell that evening when he came home from work. She had been nervous about how he would react, worried that this was too soon, that they were not ready for a child when they were still struggling to establish themselves. But Russell's face lit up with joy. He picked her up and spun her around the small cabin, laughing. "We are going to have a baby. Bethany, this is incredible. We can barely afford to feed ourselves," she pointed out, but she was smiling. "We will manage, we always do." He set her down gently, his hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "Our child, yours and mine, that is a miracle, Bethany." She covered his hand with hers. "Yes, it is. The pregnancy was difficult." Bethany was sick almost constantly for the first 3 months, and the small cabin felt even smaller as her body changed and grew. Russell was attentive and worried, doing his best to help despite his long work hours. He would rub her aching back, hold her hair when she was sick, sit with her in the evenings and talk about the future they were building together. In March, a letter arrived. It was addressed to Bethany in her mother's handwriting, forwarded through a complex chain that Maria had arranged. Bethany stared at it for a long time before opening it, her hands shaking. The letter was brief and to the point. Her father had been furious when he discovered her gone. He had sent men looking for her, but the trail had gone cold somewhere north of Las Vegas, New Mexico. He had declared her dead to the family, removed her from his will entirely, forbidden anyone in the household from speaking her name. But her mother wrote that she understood why Bethany had left, that she hoped her daughter had found happiness, and that she loved her even if they could never see each other again. Enclosed was a bank draft for $500, everything her mother had been able to scrape together from her own accounts without her husband's knowledge. "For the grandchild I will never meet," she had written. Bethany cried when she read the letter, grieving the loss of her family even as she held tight to the new life she had built. Russell held her and let her cry, understanding that she could love him and still mourn what she had given up. The money from her mother helped immensely. Combined with what Russell had saved and what Bethany had gotten from selling her grandmother's jewelry, they finally had enough to make a down payment on a small piece of land. It was only 40 acres, nothing compared to her father's empire, but it was theirs. They spent every spare moment working to build a house on it, a modest structure but solid and well made. Russell had learned carpentry during his wandering years, and he put those skills to use now, building a home for his growing family. Their son was born in late July of 1879, delivered by a midwife in the new house Russell had finished just weeks before. It was a difficult birth that lasted nearly 20 hours, and there were moments when Bethany thought she might not survive it. But finally, she heard the sharp cry of her baby, and the midwife placed a squalling, red-faced infant in her arms. Russell, who had paced outside during the labor, was allowed in to meet his son. He looked at the tiny baby with an expression of such wonder and love that Bethany fell in love with him all over again. "What should we name him?" Russell asked, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "Robert," Bethany said without hesitation. It had been her grandfather's name, one of the few happy memories she had from her childhood. Robert William Lewis. "That is perfect," Russell agreed. Parenthood was exhausting and overwhelming and absolutely wonderful. Bethany had never been so tired in her life, but she had also never been so happy. Watching Russell with their son, seeing the gentle way he held the baby, hearing him sing lullabies in his off-key voice, made her heart feel like it might burst. This was what love looked like, she thought. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but this quiet devotion, this daily choice to care for each other and the life they had created together. Their ranch grew slowly but steadily. Russell was an excellent cattleman, and he had a knack for breeding good stock. They started with a small herd, just 20 head, but within 2 years they had tripled that number. The work was hard, and there were setbacks, a harsh winter that killed several cattle, a bout of illness that swept through the herd, but they persevered. Bethany worked alongside Russell when she could, learning to rope and brand and handle cattle. She was not as strong as the men Russell occasionally hired for big jobs, but she was quick and smart, and she earned their respect. In the spring of 1881, Bethany discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect, or perhaps because her body had adjusted to the physical labor of ranch life. Their daughter was born in November, a healthy baby with Russell's whiskey-colored eyes and Bethany's dark hair. They named her Margaret Catherine, after both their mothers, though they called her Maggie. Life settled into a rhythm over the next few years. The ranch prospered, their children grew, and the love between Bethany and Russell deepened into something solid and enduring. They had their disagreements, of course, their moments of frustration and exhaustion, but they always came back to the foundation of respect and affection they had built their marriage on. Bethany sometimes thought about her family, wondered if her father ever regretted his harshness, if her mother missed her. But those thoughts came less frequently as time passed. She had built a new family now, one based on choice rather than obligation. She had friends in Pueblo, women she had met at church and town socials who valued her for who she was rather than her family name. She had a husband who loved her and children who filled her days with purpose and joy. In the summer of 1884, a man came to their ranch. He was older, well-dressed, clearly not a local. Bethany felt a jolt of recognition even before he introduced himself as Samuel Henderson, her father's lawyer. Her stomach twisted with anxiety. She had not had contact with her family in 6 years. What could possibly bring her father's lawyer here now? "Mrs. Lewis," Henderson said, removing his hat. "I have been searching for you for some time. I apologize for the intrusion, but I have news regarding your family." Russell appeared at Bethany's side, having seen the stranger from the barn. "What kind of news?" Henderson looked uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should speak privately." "Anything you have to say to my wife you can say in front of me," Russell said firmly. Henderson nodded. "Very well. Mrs. Lewis, I am sorry to inform you that your father passed away 3 weeks ago. Heart failure. It was sudden." Bethany felt the news like a physical blow, even though her relationship with her father had been severed for years. He was still her father, and some part of her had always hoped for reconciliation, even though she had known it would never come. "And my mother." "Your mother is well, physically at least, but she is grieving and the situation has become complicated." You see, your brother Thomas died 2 years ago in a riding accident. Your father never recovered from that loss, according to your mother. That leaves you as your father's only living child." "I thought I was cut out of the will," Bethany said. "You were. However, your mother is contesting that decision. She has filed suit to have you reinstated as an heir. The estate is substantial, Mrs. Lewis. The Morrison Ranch alone is worth over $200,000, not counting the other properties and investments. Your mother believes half of it should be yours." Bethany felt dizzy. She sat down heavily on the porch steps. Russell's hand came to rest on her shoulder, steadying her. "I do not want my father's money," she said. "With respect, Mrs. Lewis, your mother wants you to have it. She wrote you a letter." Henderson pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to Bethany. She opened it with shaking hands and read her mother's familiar script. The letter explained that Catherine Morrison had spent 6 years regretting that she had not stood up to her husband, had not defended her daughter's choice. She wrote that she had been weak and complicit in driving Bethany away, and that she wanted to make amends. The lawsuit was not about the money, though Catherine acknowledged that Bethany deserved her share of the estate. It was about finally doing right by her daughter. The letter ended with a plea. "Please come home, if only for a visit. I want to meet my grandchildren. I want to tell you in person how proud I am of you for having the courage I lacked." Bethany wiped tears from her eyes and handed the letter to Russell. He read it silently, then looked at her. "What do you want to do?" "I do not know," she admitted. "That life feels like it belonged to someone else. I am not the same person I was when I left New Mexico." "No, you are not," Russell agreed. "You are stronger now, more sure of yourself, and that means you get to decide what kind of relationship you want with your mother, if any. You do not owe her forgiveness just because she is asking for it." "But I think I want to give it anyway," Bethany said slowly. "She was trapped too, in her own way. My father controlled everything, including her. Maybe she did not have the strength to defy him while he was alive, but she is trying now. That has to count for something." They discussed it at length over the following days. Eventually, they decided to travel to New Mexico, to let Bethany see her mother and make peace with her past. The lawsuit could wait. The lawyers could sort out the financial details. What mattered was the human connection, the possibility of healing old wounds. The journey back to Chisholm Ranch was strange for Bethany. Everything looked both familiar and foreign, like a place from a dream. When they rode up to the main house, her mother was waiting on the porch. Catherine Morrison had aged in the 6 years since Bethany had last seen her. Her hair was completely gray now, and there were deep lines around her eyes and mouth. But when she saw Bethany, her face lit up with joy. "My girl," Catherine said, hurrying down the steps. "Oh, my girl, you came." Bethany dismounted and found herself pulled into her mother's embrace. She had forgotten how her mother smelled of lavender and vanilla, how her hugs felt safe despite everything. "Mother," she said, her voice breaking. "I missed you. I missed you too, every single day." Catherine pulled back to look at Bethany, her eyes taking in the way her daughter had changed. "You look happy, truly happy." "I am," Bethany said. She turned to Russell, who was helping their children down from their horses. "Mother, this is my husband, Russell Lewis. And these are your grandchildren, Robert and Maggie." Catherine's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the 2 children. Robert was 5 now, a sturdy boy with his father's eyes and his mother's determination. Maggie was 3, shy but curious, peeking out from behind Russell's legs. "They are beautiful," Catherine said. "May I?" Bethany nodded, and Catherine knelt down to greet her grandchildren properly. Within minutes, she had won them over with the promise of cookies and a tour of the ranch. As the children ran off with their grandmother toward the house, Bethany and Russell stood together in the yard where Bethany had grown up. "Are you all right?" Russell asked quietly. "I am better than all right," Bethany said, taking his hand. "I was afraid coming back here would make me regret leaving, would remind me of everything I gave up. But Russell, all I can think about is how much I gained. This place, my father's empire, it all feels empty compared to what we have built together. The ranch in Pueblo, our children, our life that is real wealth. That is what matters." "I am glad to hear you say that," Russell said, smiling, "because I was starting to feel a little inadequate next to all this." He gestured at the sprawling Morrison ranch with its grand house and numerous outbuildings. Bethany laughed. "You could never be inadequate, Russell Lewis. You are the best man I have ever known." They stayed at the Morrison ranch for 2 weeks. During that time, Bethany made peace with her past. She visited her father's grave, said goodbye to the man he had been, and the relationship they never had. She introduced her mother to the woman she had become, and Catherine embraced that woman with pride and love. She showed Robert and Maggie the places she had played as a child, told them stories about growing up in New Mexico, gave them a sense of their heritage even though it was not the life they would live. Catherine's lawsuit was successful. The court ruled that William Morrison's decision to disinherit his daughter had been made in anger and was not representative of his true wishes. Bethany inherited half of the Morrison estate, an enormous sum that made her and Russell wealthy beyond anything they had imagined. But they made careful decisions about that money. They kept their ranch in Pueblo, improved and expanded it, but did not fundamentally change their life. They set aside money for their children's futures. They invested in the community, helping to build a school and a hospital in Pueblo. They donated to causes they believed in, and they stayed true to the values that had brought them together in the first place. Russell never stopped being the hard-working, honest man Bethany had fallen in love with. Bethany never stopped being the strong, independent woman who had chosen her own path, despite enormous pressure to conform. They raised their children with love and respect, teaching them to value character over wealth, to judge people by their actions rather than their bank accounts. Catherine Morrison moved to Pueblo after selling the New Mexico ranch. She said there were too many memories there, and she wanted to be near her daughter and grandchildren. She bought a house in town and became a beloved grandmother, doting on Robert and Maggie and eventually on their third child, a son named Thomas after Bethany's brother, who was born in 1887. The years passed peacefully. Russell and Bethany's ranch became one of the most successful in the region, known for the quality of its cattle and the integrity of its owners. Their children grew up strong and happy, secure in the knowledge that they were loved. Robert became a veterinarian, using his love of animals to help the community. Maggie became a teacher, passionate about education and helping others. Thomas followed in his father's footsteps, learning the cattle business and eventually taking over the management of the ranch. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Russell and Bethany rode out to the spot where they had first kissed, the creek near Chisholm Ranch that was now hundreds of miles away from their Colorado home. They had made the journey specifically to visit it, to remember where they had started. They stood together by the water, older now but still deeply in love, and Bethany thought about everything that had happened since that first kiss. "You ever regret it?" Russell asked, echoing the question he had asked her so many years ago. "Giving up your family's approval, the easy life you could have had." Bethany looked at him, this man who had stood by her through every challenge, every joy, every ordinary day of their life together. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for a single moment. You told me once that you were marrying me, not my family or their approval, and Russell, that was the greatest gift you could have given me. You saw me, really saw me and loved me for who I was. Everything else, All the wealth and success we have achieved, that is just extra. The real treasure is this, she gestured between them, us, what we have built together. Russell pulled her close, kissing her with the same tenderness he had shown 20 years ago. I love you, Bethany Lewis. I loved you then, I love you now, and I will love you until my last breath. And I love you, Russell Lewis. You are my home, my heart, my everything. They stood together by the creek as the sun set, two people who had chosen love over expectation, courage over comfort, and had built a life more beautiful than either of them could have imagined. They had faced down disapproval, poverty, hardship, and doubt, and they had emerged stronger for it. Their love story was not the easy fairy tale of a wealthy girl and her suitable match. It was the real, messy, beautiful story of two people who had fought for each other and won. As they rode back to the small inn where they were staying, Bethany felt profoundly grateful. Grateful for the courage she had found to defy her father. Grateful for Russell's steadfast love and support. Grateful for their children and grandchildren, for the community they had built, for the life they shared. She had been born Bethany Morrison, daughter of wealth and privilege, trapped by expectations and obligations. But she had become Bethany Lewis, wife and mother and rancher, free to make her own choices and live her own life. And that, she thought, was worth more than all the cattle in New Mexico. The years continued to be kind to them. They grew old together, their hair turning silver, their faces etched with the lines of a life well lived. They sat on the porch of their Colorado ranch in the evenings, watching the sunset over their land, surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Catherine lived to be 83, passing peacefully in her sleep with Bethany at her side. Robert married a kind woman named Elizabeth and gave them 3 grandchildren. Maggie married a fellow teacher and had 2 children of her own. Thomas married his childhood sweetheart and had 4 rambunctious boys who kept everyone on their toes. Russell and Bethany watched their family grow and flourish, and they knew they had made the right choice all those years ago. Love had been worth fighting for. Freedom had been worth the sacrifice. And the life they had built together had been worth every moment of struggle and doubt. On a warm summer evening in 1905, Russell and Bethany sat together on their porch, holding hands as they had done for nearly 30 years of marriage. They were in their 70s now, slowed by age but still sharp of mind and warm of heart. Their great-grandchildren played in the yard, their laughter echoing across the ranch that had started as 40 acres and a dream and had grown into something substantial and lasting. "Did you ever imagine this?" Bethany asked, watching a great-granddaughter chase a great-grandson around the old oak tree Russell had planted when they first bought the land. "All of this, from that one choice we made. I imagined being happy," Russell said. "I imagined loving you for the rest of my life. But this, all of this exceeds anything I could have dreamed." Bethany leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, as dependable now as he had been when they first met. "I am so glad I chose you." "I am glad you chose yourself," Russell replied. "I was just fortunate enough to be part of that choice." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, surrounded by the physical evidence of their love and their choices. The ranch, the family, the community they had helped build, all of it was a testament to what was possible when two people chose courage over fear, love over obligation, and each other over everything else. Bethany Morrison had warned Russell Lewis that her family would never approve. And Russell had said, "Good thing I am only marrying you." Those words had changed both of their lives, had set them on a path that led to hardship and joy, struggle and triumph, and ultimately to a love that lasted a lifetime. As the last light faded from the sky and the stars began to appear, Russell and Bethany remained on their porch, hands intertwined, hearts forever bound. They had fought for their love, and their love had given them everything that mattered. In the end, that was the only approval they had ever needed.